Hey, it's your Reverend Aegis here, and in this video I want to walk you through how to get the Trifecta title, the Dreaded, in Veteran, the Dread Cellar, in ESO. In my opinion, this Trifecta is more about what the healer and the tank are doing than it is about what the DPS do, since they're pretty much just going to kill shit and don't die. So I am going to go over my recommended CP and give you some gearing options for your support tunes. In addition, there are 3 side bosses that are optional that give you buffs in this dungeon. However, we only needed to get the first 2 to accomplish what we wanted. We actually had plenty of time remaining, since the speedrun component of this is 25 minutes. We could have gotten all 3, but we figured we weren't even going to use the 3rd one, so why bother? Since there's nothing particularly challenging about defeating these side bosses, I'm going to use the time on the side bosses to explain the rationale for my gearing and CP. As a tank, what I found the most challenging thing about the Dreaded was sustaining, especially on the 1st and 3rd hard modes. To combat this, I used 2 infused block cost reduction pieces of jewelry, as well as the MVP of sustain, the mythic item Bloodlord's Embrace. Now, I did something quite different than my usual builds for Trifectas here. I actually wore Yulnakrins on my front bar and War Machine on my back bar, and the Bloodspawn monster set. I wanted those 2 proc sets, that way I could make sure I could keep on Bloodlord's Embrace, because sustain is crucial here. And I wore Bloodspawn because I wanted to cap my resistances, and also I wanted to have that ultra-fast ultimate regeneration, which became very important, especially for the last fight. Another major concern with tanking this Trifecta is you end up taking a lot of damage, again, especially on the 1st and 3rd fights. So I wanted my CP slottables to reflect both sustain and damage mitigation. So I went with Survival Instinct, which decreases the cost of my core combat skills, including block, Bracing Anchor, which is just an amazing tank CP slottable, and Expert Evasion for that free roll dodge. The 4th one's up to you, it's personal preference. Now, as far as my skills go, I did want to point out a couple of things. Again, the damage in this dungeon is really high, so I wanted to make sure I had Temporal Guard as my front bar ultimate. That gives you passive minor protection. But also for sustain on my front bar, I put on Defensive Stance, which is from the Sword and Ward bar. That reduces the cost of block by 10% and reduces the amount of damage you can block by 10%. So it became very important, again, especially on this first hard mode and that last hard mode. And then lastly, another thing I wanted to point out, I did have Frost Clench as my main back bar taunt because I wanted to keep that minor brittle uptime up as much as possible. But I actually have, as you'll see here, I actually have the other range taunt here on my bar because it has a much bigger range. So in this fight in particular, when I needed to range taunt something that was really far away, which is very important, I did have that inner fire slotted. Now that I've talked about surviving as the tank, let's go over the actual mechanics for this fight, in particular, how to secure the no-death component of this first hard mode. This is a slow burn fight, as adds spawn every 10%, and the adds are the priority to take down. In fact, you definitely do not want to overburn the boss, as because it will be very overwhelming to have a bunch of adds up while you're trying to do the crystal mechanic at the same time. Because this fight is very slow and controlled, and because there's a lot of AoE damage that goes around during this fight, I highly recommend not doing a 3 DPS strategy, and bringing a healer along is going to make the run a lot easier to secure that Trifecta. At 80, 60, 40, and 20%, the Scorian Broodlord is going to teleport into the sky, and then it's going to open another portal from the sky, showing you what crystal it's going to land on. Also, 2 adds are going to spawn, because adds spawn every 10%. We send one of our DPS over to the crystal to destroy the crystal as fast as possible, and the other DPS stays with the tank and kills the adds that come up. You can either have your healer Ellie drain the crystal to make it go down faster, or if your DPS is comfortable with it, you can let that DPS Ellie drain the crystal himself. It is absolutely crucial that that crystal be taken down as quickly as possible, as the Broodlord will enrage if it's up too long, and its abdomen will start glowing. That means that it's going to suck in all members of your group periodically and put out a giant AoE that puts a huge dot on everybody in the group, and it's very difficult to survive through that dot without a barrier and really good healing. If you avoid the enrage mechanic, it's much easier as only one group member gets sucked in and the attack can be interrupted, preventing any major damage from going out. Now, after we kill the adds at 50%, that's when we go over and send our healer to summon the Purgator. That is the crystal on the opposite end of the room. In all 3 of these hard modes, the Purgator is your best friend. Not only does it do a ton of damage, and all of your group members can activate that Sunburst synergy, which hits incredibly hard and hits everything on the map, the Purgator is really intelligent. It will appropriately prioritize the adds and the crystal. So when there's adds up and no crystal, it'll run over and kill the adds. And when there is a crystal, it'll ignore the adds and run over and kill the crystal. Again, we always summon the Purgator right after we kill the adds that spawn at 50%. This pretty much ensures that the Purgator will be up for the remaining time that we are fighting this boss. If you want to be really fancy, you can call commit after you kill the add at 30%, and you can focus on the boss from then on out, or you can play the safe strat and continue killing the adds as they come up. Since the speed component of this trifecta is 25 minutes, I highly recommend that you should have that boss defeated before you reach minute 10. Since we have some time now to watch these trash pulls and to watch the second optional boss, I want to go over what our second support, our healer, is wearing. Our healer is wearing Saxeals. That's to give us those supercharged barriers, especially important in the final hard mode. He's also wearing Spell Power Cure for the obvious Major Courage, and Symphony of Blades to really help sustain with the tank. I know a lot of people don't run Symphony of Blades anymore on their healer because Bosses exists for the DPS, but your tank is going to be so much happier having that extra stamina sustain in this dungeon. As far as healing skills go, the healer should obviously run a bunch of hots. There's a lot of damage that goes around in this dungeon, so the more hots the better. We have a DK healer, so that Cinderstorm is literally my best friend after the Purgator. Blood Altar is a must for this dungeon as well, as that is that huge oh shit heal that anybody can synergize whenever their health drops below what they feel is comfortable. As having appropriately timed barriers is an important part of our strategy on the final hard mode, our healer also slotted Shield Master as one of the Red Tree CP slottables. That decreases the damage shield cost by 10%. That includes the ultimate ability barrier, so now it costs 225 instead of 250. The second hard mode boss is pretty much just a DPS race. So what me and the healer do is we make sure we build up a 500 ultimate between the first hard mode and the second hard mode. That's because we want to have pretty much maximum uptime on War Machine and on Saxeals. High DPS groups, which are most groups going for the dreaded Trifecta, should have no trouble defeating this boss before the wall phase ends or before the skull mechanic starts. Now, we actually failed to do it on this run, which is funny because literally every run except this one, we beat the crap out of this boss before he finished the wall mechanic. Now, earlier I said I was wearing the Bloodspawn monster helm, and you may be wondering why I'm not wearing something like Incrades that increases damage. And the reason Incrades is a problem is it's hard for me to see the walls when there's that big red circle around me, so that's why I don't wear Incrades in this dungeon. Now, I think one of the reasons why we didn't beat this boss quickly is because I did a pretty bad job keeping up Backstabber for my group, turning this boss around, because the wall RNG wasn't the best. Sometimes we have a lot more space, so my brittle uptime was bad, and I didn't really give my group Backstabber by turning him around, so I think that's why we actually got the skull mechanic. Getting the skull mechanic is unfortunate because the boss takes very little damage while he's doing it. He has a really big damage shield. Not only that, but you have to block cast through the whole thing. What's nice is when we have the Purgator out, the adds are pretty trivialized because you just have the Purgator kill them and the synergy kills the adds. So if you get the skull mechanic, no big deal, just block cast through it or roll dodge those skulls and it'll just add some time, but not really that much extra difficulty. One more tip I have for that fight is during the wall mechanic, if you actually start out close to the blue crystal side, that'll not only give you room to walk back and forth or left and right, but it also gives you a lot of room to walk with the walls so you can walk towards the orange crystal side, giving you more space to maneuver when dodging those walls. Here we're skipping the third optional boss and moving on right to the final hard mode, Magma Incarnate, who I will affectionately refer to as Maggie from here on out. The first phase in the fight against Maggie is 100% health to about 67% health. What we do is we like to run in and ulti dump him, and me and the healer again probably have saved up 500 ultimate, or at least close to 500 ultimate, for that really nice uptime on Saxeals and on War Machine. The biggest thing to look out for here is this laser beam now, and when he's channeling that, there's a big red circle AoE underneath him. And all of your team wants to get away from that because it does huge damage, and a lot of DPS inadvertently die because it's hard to see. When the laser finally hits, you want to make sure your team isn't stacked. If they're stacked, someone's probably going to die. After it hits, it leaves those red puddles on the ground, and again, those are dot AoEs, so your team should avoid them. You can see here that mechanic again. One other thing that you saw earlier was the center. There's a big AoE that goes out from the center. When that hits for the first time, it spawns 2 tornadoes on Maggie, and you want to avoid being next to Maggie when it explodes. The AoE itself pretty much does nothing, so your group can stack inside of it. You don't need to get to the outside. At 66%, we teleport to one of the rooms to destroy a crystal downstairs. There are 6 possible rooms that you'll be teleported to, so you'll only end up seeing 2 of them in your Trifecta run. If you want a guide on how to do each of the rooms or what happens in each of the rooms, I do have a separate video that you can use as sort of an appendix to this one. But anyway, as the tank, you're going to want to apply all the debuffs to the crystal, taunt everything that's a big priority, and let your DPS do their job on the crystal. Again, we don't want that Scorian Broodlord to get enraged. Now, you just saw our healer hit a barrier before we went back through the portal. That's important because we want to avoid any inadvertent damage that happens as we spawn back upstairs. Now, as soon as everyone gets back upstairs, our healer is going to drop all of his hots, and then he's going to go summon the blue crystal. That's going to give us the Undertaker, which gives us a heal over time if we hit the synergy, as well as it decreases our damage. Now, as the tank, I have to be on the lookout for a Scorian Collector. He's going to spawn near the white crystal almost every time. Now, because I'm looking around the room, I tell everyone in my group to leave their mics unmuted because they need to tell me if the mechanic is about to happen. Because if I can't see the boss, I can't see the mechanic. The mechanic is I need to go stack on the boss. He puts a circle around him. I need to run and stand inside of it, or else it kills multiple people in the group instantly, and there's nothing I can do about it. So again, because I'm looking out for a mini-boss, they're telling me, hey, the mechanic's happening, which tells me to roll back in. Here's that mechanic right here. I'd go stand inside. Now, when the Broodlord comes out, I always taunt it, and then I bash it to apply Bloodlord's Embrace. That's because that thing will eat up your stamina, so I often taunt it, bash it, switch to my back bar, and block on my ice staff bar to prevent myself from running out of resources. It's very important that Bloodlord's Embrace is equipped here if you want to have really easy sustain. One more tip for the second phase of the fight, and that is the priority of killing things. When you come back, it's important that the scamps die first, as they're going to eat away at your health of your group, and they're going to prevent you from getting good time on target of the Broodlord when it comes out. As soon as the Broodlord comes out, it's important that it's taunted, brought into the group, and that it's tap targeted and killed as soon as possible. Then you can focus on killing Maggie. Now, after we come back from the 33% portal, the priorities change. We actually come up, again, with that barrier active, and we summon the Purgator. We let the Purgator beat the crap out of all the ads. We hit that synergy as often as possible. Again, my group is calling out a mechanic, and I am looking for the Broodlord, and we're going to ignore the Broodlord. We're going to tap target the boss and the boss only, and we're going to watch his health drop very rapidly, thanks to our best friend, the Purgator, and the fact that we have 2 of the best execute classes in the game beating him up. And there you have it. There is the Dreaded. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and leave a comment. And if you have yet to subscribe to my tanking channel, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. Meanwhile, Maggie, enjoy your tea.